it comes to the qualitative, it is nothing but it is other than numeric value. So as we all know that qualitative data will going to deals with y, and it will going to deals with the data which is not in the numeric form. We are dealing with a big data, so the data must be adequate. So for that purpose, I have to collect the data from different sources. In this data collection method, it involves dividing a population into subgroups that share similar characteristics. Hello everybody, a warm welcome to one and all. I am Rohini T.S. from the Department of Computer Science, Vidhyaashram First Grade College, the Temple of Excellence, MYSURU. So in my today's session, I am dealing with a B.C.A. third year, that is semester 5, a subject called Cloud Computing and Big Data Analytics, and we are dealing with a unit 3 which is of session 2, and the unit name is Introduction to Big Data Acquisition, Collection and Transmission. So in the last class, we were discussed about some of the topics which I have covered in my last session. So in our today's session, we are dealing with a qualitative versus quantitative data. As the name indicates, qualitative and quantitative. So qualitative is not related to numbers, so we can't measure that quality. But when it comes to quantitative, it is in the terms of numbers. That means we can measure that. So as we all know that data and information is an asset to the organization. So it needs to be both qualitative as well as quantitative. Then what are the qualitative data we have and what are the quantitative data we have? And what are the methods we have in order to get or in order to collect qualitative as well as the quantitative, and what are the differences we have in both of the types, we'll see now. So when it comes to the qualitative versus quantitative, here you can see that this quantitative are dealing with something that can be counted. So as the name indicates, quantitative, that can be measured, that can be counted. But when it comes to the qualitative, it is nothing but it is other than numeric value. So we can't count it or we can't have any of the numeric value. For example, if you are giving me a sweets, if I am asking what is the cost of this one, so that will be quantitative. So if I am enjoying the taste of that sweet, will be termed as qualitative. So that is what? Quality, that is not in terms of numbers, that is not in the terms of counting measures. But when it comes to the quantity, there we are going to deal with the numeric values which can be counted. So here in general, questionnaires, surveys and documents or records or the quantitative. That means how many surveys you are done and how many documents we have and what are the number of pages in the documents, what are the number of records you have. So all these things related to quantitative. Then what about this qualitative? Interviews, focus group and then observation and the oral history are the qualitative. So there I am going to take the experience of an individual. I am just going to take a experience of individual in a group. So I am just asking some questions there. At that time, I will get the data which is qualitative in nature. So this is the difference between quantitative as well as the qualitative. So now we'll see quantitative methods. So it includes surveys, large scale benchmarks and prioritization. Answers the question how much. Quantitative will going to answer the question like how much. So as I told, if you are giving me a sweet, if I am asking what is the cost, how much it costs, that is related to quantitative. But if I am asking related how the best sweet it is, that means why it is so sweet or why it is not so sweet. So what are the ingredients they have put. So that is related to qualitative. So here surveys, large scale benchmark and prioritization will going to answer the question called how much. But these methods can leave the questions why. So this why or unanswered question called why will going to be concerned by the qualitative. So quantitative will be related to how much, qualitative will be related to why. And this is where qualitative data collection methods come into play. There we are going to use qualitative in the why and we are going to use how much, that is quantitative in the how much. So now we'll see about the qualitative data. So as we all know that qualitative data will going to deals with y and it will going to deals with the data which is not in the numeric form. So this qualitative methods involve the collection and analysis and management of the data instead of counting the responses or recording of the numeric data. So this method will going to assess the factors like thoughts and feelings of research participants. So when it comes to the qualitative, it will going to deals with a factor like the thoughts, and it will deals with the feelings of a research participants. And we have some of the methods in order to collect this qualitative data. So qualitative, we are dealing with the research participants. We are giving the importance to their feeling, we are giving the importance to their thoughts. So when it comes to the qualitative collection method, at that time it will going to deals with interact with a study participant. I can get a communication with them, I can collect the data and interaction between the respondents, and also research staff will going to provide a valuable data which will be termed as what? Qualitative data. So now we'll see some of the qualitative research methods. So this qualitative research or a qualitative data will going to have a data which is related to counting things, that will be in the terms of number. How can we get the data? Like it can be termed as what? Having a records, having a reports, and having doing some of the surveys, and we can get from marketers, scientists, academics, and other will going to be used as a predetermined hypothesis. Already it is exists. By using that, we are going to take some of the data which is in the terms of some number which is related to some countable things. So this is the difference between qualitative as well as the quantitative. So now we'll see about the data collection methods or data collection tools. So what are the tools we have in order to collect the data? We are dealing with a big data, so the data must be adequate. So for that purpose, I have to collect the data from different sources. So what is the first tool I have in order to get the data? First is what? Interviews. So in the interviews, it is like a face-to-face interactions, or it can be takes place over the mobile phone. I'm just going to have set of questions. I will ask those questions. So and I will notice the answer, whatever they are going to give. And by that method, I can collect the data. For example, if I wanted to join any of the colleges, at that time, I will just going to have some of the question regarding the college, like what is the rating of this college, what is the timings, and how many work days we have. Everything we are going to have some of the predefined questions. So that questions will be asked in a systematic manner, whatever the answer they are giving. By using that answer, we will get the data. So first method is what? Interviews. So next we have a observation. So in this observation, I'm not ready to ask anybody in order to collect the data. So I'm just going to observe without asking any questions. So that could be right or wrong, but I can get some data without asking anything. So here collecting of the informations will going to be takes place without asking questions. So sometimes this method is more subjective, so I can't predict it whether it is right or wrong. So I may think in a wrong way, I may think in a right way. So there could be a possibility of having both the right and wrong of collecting the data which comes in the observation. So next we have a documents and records. So this documents and records will going to be based on the research uses existing data. So it already documented, which is already in the record format. We are going to use the data and information which is already exist in the that data will be used for the study. Okay, so you can take the example of attendance record. So in order to track the student details, we can have the attendance record, and we can have the minutes of meeting, and financial records are just a few examples which is related to this documents and records. Next we have a focus group. So in this focus group, how they are going to do the data, like how they are going to collect the data. So it is a combination of interviewing and surveying. I'm both surveying, I'm just analyzing what is happening, and also I'm asking some question, but to whom? And observing. Focus group is a data collection method that involves several individuals who have something in common. So it is like a likely minded people collection. So if I ask anything about anything, all of the individual will going to give the same answer. That is what? Focus group. So we are going to make a bunch of people as one group. We are going to make another bunch of people as a one group. So at that time, If I ask anything about anybody, at that time all individual will going to give the same answer. That means they have something in common related to their thoughts, feelings and all. We'll see the next tool, that is oral history. So in this, we are just going to ask some question to the person who were existed at that situation. So for example, if I wanted to get to know how was the situations when the British were ruling us. So at that time, if I ask any of the freedom fighters, those who are alive right now, at that time they are just going to share their experience. So that means what, I'm getting the data of the history, I'm getting the data of the history, the person one who were there during that situations or during that scenario. So here this is nothing but what, it is a recording, preservation and interpretation of historical information which will be based on opinion and personal experience of a people who were involved in the events. So if you wanted to take a real-time example, so the students, those who are coming from Ukraine to India, so if I ask the experience of those students at the time of Russia and Ukraine attack, they are just going to share their personal opinions. So at that time what, I'm getting some data, how was the situations there. So that means we are collecting the data which is already exist by the people's opinion, by the people personal experience, that is related to oral histories. Next we have a questionnaires and surveys. So here I am going to have a set of questions. It will be asked to individuals randomly. At that time they are just going to answer. So we are going to rate the question and answer which will going to best suits for the requirement. Then we are going to pick that answer as the resultant for this question. And we are going to do the surveys by collecting the data and information. So these many tools we have in order to collect the data for the analysis. Next we'll see sampling methods in data collection. What is the next topic? Sampling methods in data collection. So how we are going to collect the sample in the data collection method. So that means that particular sample will going to let us understand what is this data is all about. So for data analysis we require samples. So we require data. Then how can I get the data? We have some methods, that is random sampling. So random sampling, we are going to picking respondents with no design or order. I'm just going to pick up the samples irrespective of any of the situations or irrespective of any of the rules and conditions. So I'm not going to follow any of the rules and regulation. I will just pick up the respondents with no design or order. It is not in a systematic manner. So it is preferred way of sampling, as truly random sample eliminates the elements that can affect the validity of study. Main thing is what regarding this random sampling. So in this random sampling, what is the main advantage? So if I leave any of the person or if I leave any of the data which may affect my data analysis, there could be a possibility of leaving that. Why? Because I'm just randomly picking the data and informations. So if the data and information which is not in the sample which I have collected, then that will not going to affect my system. Then that will be considered as what? One of the advantage. So next we have a systematic sampling. It is just a reverse of this random sampling. The systematic sampling will going to follow set of rules to create regularity in sampling. It will have some set of rules. So if I wanted to collect some sample, I have to follow some rules and regulations. So in order to collect that samples. So example is what? Interviewing every 10th customer. For example, I have 100 customers. In that 100 customer, I need to attend or I need to interview every 10th customer, like a 10, 20, 30. So there is some systematic way. But here, if I have 100 customers in the random sampling, I may pick 12th one, 14th one, 18th one. There is no rules in the random sampling, but that is not in the case of systematic sampling. We'll see the next method, that is convenience sampling. So in this method, as the name indicates, I'm just going to collect the samples which is convenient for me. That is what convenience sampling involves: gathering information from whoever is closest and easiest to reach. For example, what happened in the college? So instead of making a call to anybody, those who are not there in that situation, I will just ask the person one who is just beside me. That means that will be easy for me in order to reach or in order to get the data. So that kind of sampling method will be termed as what? Convenient sampling. Next we have a clustered sampling. So in this clustered sampling, researchers uses the subgroups of a population instead of individuals. For example, you consider I have a data. So in this I have some several set of data. So at the time, instead of accessing this individual or instead of reaching this individual, I will just group some methods or I will just group some data as one sample. So I will consider another set of individuals as another sample. So this is clustering method. I will just wanted to group the individual into some subgroups and then I will collect the samples from the particular group. So that particular subgroup will be termed as what? Clustered sampling. So it uses the subgroup of a population instead of individual. Instead of considering this as one data or instead of considering this as another data, I will just make a likely group. I will just make a likely individual as a subgroup. Then I will get the data from that particular sampling method. Next, we have a stratified sampling. So, in this data collection method, it involves dividing a population into subgroups that share similar characteristics. So, this stratified sampling is somehow related to this cluster sampling. So, in this, we are going to use as the subgroup of a population instead of individual. But in this stratified sampling, we are going to divide a population into subgroup that shares similar characteristics. That means what? If I have like, you just understand this one. Okay, so when I'm using the stratified sampling, at the time how I'm going to do, I'm just going to make this as one sample and I will just have this 2 as one sample. I will just make this as one sample and I will just ignore this or I will take it as another sample. That means I'm collecting the data and informations which is shares will going to have some similar characteristics. But if I wanted to do the same thing for the cluster, at the time I'm just going to make this as one cluster. I will just make another thing as another cluster. That is the difference between clustered and stratified sampling. So now we'll see sources of big data. So as I told, as the emergence of a large amount of data day by day, which is growing exponentially, it is necessary to collect the data from different sources. I have some of the tools like I can interview, I can only observe, I can have a oral histories, I can collect with some of the tools. But from where I can get the data? So that is related to sources of the big data. So as we all know that this data is very massive and exists in various forms. So it is necessary to analyze the data and I need to collect the data from different sources. So it can be takes place media. So I can get the data from media, I can get the data from cloud and I can get the data from web and I can get the data from IoT as well as I can get the data from various data basis. We'll see the first type, that is media as a big data source. So this media is nothing but social media, collection of social media. I can include Twitter, Facebook, Hangouts, Twitters or YouTube, Instagram. Those are all the social media. So by taking the likes, by considering the comments or by taking the feedback, I can get some data which is required for my analysis. So here media is the most popular source of big data as it provides valuable insights on consumer preferences and changing trends. So if you are searching something over again and again, at the time you are going to get the preference, like you are going to get the suggestions in some of the Flipkart or Amazon. For example, if you are searching something related to shoes, at the time you are going to get the suggestions in the Amazon, Flipkart regarding the shoes. Then who is going to get to know you are searching for a shoes? That is related to this big data. They are analyzing your requirements, they are analyzing your taste, they are analyzing your preferences. So by using social media, we can get the data. So next we have a cloud as a big data. So nowadays most of the organizations or enterprise wanted to dump their data in the cloud. That means it needs to be virtualized in nature. With the help of this cloud also, I can get the data and information which is necessary for my analysis. So here cloud storage accommodates structured and unstructured data and provides business with real-time information on demanding insights. So these information which can be either structured or unstructured, but that will going to help me in order to do the analysis. So by using this cloud also, I can get the data as a big data source. Next, the web as a big data source. So as we all know that web is related to what? Searching. So if you are putting some keywords in the internet, if you are searching something, that web pages, websites, like collections of web pages, everything will going to store some data and information. By having those unstructured data, I can use that for my analysis. So here also, data on the web or internet is commonly available individuals and companies alike. What company is doing, what individuals are doing, what their perspective, what their requirements, what their preferences, everything can be get to know with the help of this internet. So whatever the data is available over the internet can be considered as one of the sources for big data. So we'll see next point, that is IoT as a big data source. That is Internet of Things can be used as a big data source. How can I do that? So machine generated content or data created from IoT constitute a valuable source of big data. So with the help of this machine generated content or data which is created from the IoT machines or a constitute, then that will going to create a valuable data which will be used for my analysis. So I can get the data from various sources. I can get the data from media, I can get the data from various web, I can get the data from cloud. Also we can get the data from IoT as well. We'll see the last source, that is database as a big data source. I can get the data and information from the database. So as we all know that database has a capability to hold a large amount of data which is heterogeneous in nature. So these databases are deployed for several business intelligence purpose. We are going to have this database for various purpose, and this database can then provide for the extraction of insights that are used to drive the business profit. So if I'm get to know the, or if I'm able to extract the inside of a organizations or inside of a people perspective or their requirement, then that can be used for the business profit. So that purpose also we are going to use this database as a media, like a database as a source for the big data analytics. And commonly used databases are MS Access, DB2, Oracle, SQL, Amazon. So these are the databases which is available or which will going to give the data and information in order to have or in order to extract the analysis, in order to do the insights of the organization or customer. So this is related to what? Big data sources. So from where and all can we get the big data, or from where we can have a source in order to have a big data. We'll see the next topic, that is related to structured versus unstructured data. Already we got to know the types of big data, that is structured data, unstructured data. So now we'll see the difference between this structured data, which data will be called as structured and which data will be considered as unstructured. So if we are getting a data from a social media, somehow that is different than the data which I have in the database. There is a difference, right? One is structured, one is not structured. That means one is unstructured. So now we'll see about the structured data. So if I'm talking about the structured data, that is also going to be categorized as the quantitative data. That means it is related in the terms of numbers. I can measure it, I can have a countable things over this structured data. So it's the type of data most of us used in the working with it. That means it is most commonly used type of data. If you take the example of relational database, that is RDBMS and spreadsheet, there we are going to have some fixed fields called and columns. So we are going to have some of the rows and column. We are going to have some of the fixed rows and columns. It is somehow structured in nature. Okay, so this will going to follow some rules and regulation in order to store the data and information. These kind of data will be termed as what? Structured data. So here I can measure how many columns I have, how many fields I have, how many rows I have. I can count it. That is what it will be related to quantitative data. Then what are the examples I can give for this structured data? So it includes names, dates, address, credit card number, stock informations, geolocations. So these are all the commonly used example for the structured data. And also you can see that if I am using any of the programming languages in order to manage the structured data, then that will be termed as what? Structured query language. So in short, it will be termed as SQL. So if I am dealing with any data which is in the database or in the relational database or which is in a spreadsheet, at that time we are going to use some of the programming language called SQL, that is structured query language. So it is also known as SQL in short. Okay, this is related to what? Structured data. So next we have a unstructured data. As the name indicates, unstructured data is defined like it is not going to be measured in the terms of counts. It is not in the terms of numeric. It is related to qualitative data. Structured data, quantitative, and unstructured data, it is related to qualitative data. So you can see that it is related to qualitative data and it cannot be processed and analyzed using conventional tools and methods. I can't analyze this unstructured data with a conventional tools and methods. So when it comes to the examples of unstructured data, it will going to include some of the text, video that can be in any format, that can be what? Animated one or can be streamed one. So can have audios and mobile activity, social media activity, satellite, and then surveillance of imaginary, that is CC cameras. So the list will goes on like this of the example of unstructured data. So somehow this unstructured data is difficult to deconstruct because it has no predefined model. Okay, this is one of the things you have to remember when it comes to the unstructured data. And this unstructured data is also considered as a key for predictive analytics software. That means what will going to take place in future. So here you can see the difference between structured data and unstructured data. So here data will be considered as what? Some rows and columns will be there. But when it comes to the unstructured data, there is no some specific rules and regulation in order to have the kind of data. So that is related to unstructured data. I hope you all understood regarding qualitative, quantitative and difference between those two, and we learned regarding structured and unstructured. So let me meet you in the next session with a continuation of this unit 3, that is introduction to big data acquisition, collection and transmission itself. So until that, keep learning, keep on growing. Thank you.